I thought I knew everything about Jason. We'd been best friends since freshman year. The kind of friends who could sit in silence for hours and not make it weird, who could read each other's moods with a glance. Jason was steady, funny in a dry way, and had this easy confidence that made people like him without even trying. I was the quieter one, the good listener, the one people vented to at parties and forgot about by Monday morning. Jason wasn't just a friend, he was the friend. My anchor when everything else felt like it was falling apart. That's why what happened that night hit me so hard. We were staying at this cheap rental cabin by the lake, about an hour outside the city. Just the two of us. No girlfriends, no distractions. A last-minute escape from the noise before summer internships swallowed us whole. The first day was easy. Beer, bad burgers on the grill, lazy conversations about nothing. We spent the evening swimming until the sunset bled into the lake, and the mosquitoes drove us inside. We crashed on opposite ends of the giant L-shaped couch, flipping through horror movies we were too tired to actually watch. Jason sprawled out, shirtless, in just his mesh gym shorts, his skin still damp from the lake. I tried not to notice the way the fabric clung when he shifted, or how the light from the TV caught the slope of his chest. Tried and failed. Around midnight, the storm rolled in. Thunder rumbled low across the sky, and rain pelted the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. "Shit," Jason muttered, glancing at the window. "Think the power's gonna cut?" I said, setting down my beer. "We're in a rental cabin in the middle of nowhere. Wouldn't be shocking." He laughed, that low, easy sound that always messed with my head more than it should. When the lights flickered and then went out completely, we both froze. Jason grabbed his phone, using the flashlight app to cast a dim glow around the room. "Well," he said, stretching, muscles flexing under his skin. "Guess we're camping inside now." I chuckled, a little too tightly. "I'll grab some candles." In the dark, moving around that tiny living room, everything felt different. Closer, like the air had thickened somehow. I lit a couple of stubby candles from the kitchen drawer, and when I turned back around, Jason was standing right there. Too close. His face was half in shadow, half lit by the soft, trembling candlelight. His eyes looked darker, heavier somehow. He smelled like lake water and the lingering smoke from the grill. Warm, familiar, dangerous. "You good?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," I said, way too fast. He smirked. The kind of smirk that always used to mean he was about to tease me or drag me into some stupid prank. But this time, it felt different. The air between us snapped tight like a pulled wire, and then he stepped even closer. The candle flickered wildly. Jason's hand brushed mine, just barely, but it was enough to set my skin on fire. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. All I knew was that Jason was standing in front of me, inches away, breathing the same air and looking at me in a way that made my chest tighten painfully. Without a word, he reached past me, grabbed the beer from the table, and took a long, slow drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "You looked like you needed one," he said, his voice rougher than before. I swallowed hard, heart hammering in my throat. "Thanks," I managed. We stood there for a beat longer than necessary, and maybe he felt it too, because his smirk softened into something else. Something unreadable. Jason finally stepped back, flopping onto the couch again with a casualness I couldn't mirror. "You comin'?" he asked, tossing a throw pillow toward the other end of the couch. I nodded mutely and sat down, feeling like the entire world had tilted slightly sideways. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The candles flickered. The storm raged outside. Inside, it was just the two of us and this thing between us I didn't have the words for. Eventually, Jason stretched out, resting his head on the armrest, his bare feet landing way too close to my thigh. I should have moved. I should have made some stupid joke to break the tension. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was, feeling the warmth of his skin radiating across the small gap between us. The only sound was the rain and the distant roll of thunder. Then, without opening his eyes, Jason said almost lazily, "You ever think about it?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Think about what?" He cracked one eye open, looking at me sideways. "You know, messing around with a guy." My heart stopped. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard him, but he was still looking at me. Casual on the surface, but his hand was gripping the edge of the pillow like he was nervous too. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Jason chuckled, low and rough. "Relax, man, I'm just messing with you." But he wasn't laughing. Not really. And I wasn't breathing. I forced a laugh, pushing my hand through my hair. "Yeah, sure, just jokes." But when I risked a glance at him, he was still watching me, silent, waiting. I turned my attention back to the TV, but I couldn't focus. The half-lit room, the heavy air between us, the way Jason's foot brushed mine once, twice, like he wasn't sure if it was an accident or an invitation. It all buzzed under my skin. I told myself to let it go, to chalk it up to beer and rain and bad timing. But then Jason shifted again, this time deliberately dragging his leg along mine before resting his ankle lightly against my thigh. I glanced at him. His eyes were closed. Fake asleep? I couldn't tell. I sat there, frozen, the heat from his skin seeping into my jeans like a brand. My heart hammered. My brain screamed at me to move. But I didn't. I stayed there, letting his foot rest against me, letting the line between friends and something else blur so badly I couldn't see it anymore. Minutes ticked by, heavy and slow. The storm outside grew louder, the rain hitting the roof in thick drumming sheets. And then Jason moved again, this time pulling his foot away, shifting onto his side to face me. His hand found my knee under the throw blanket, just resting there, light, casual, but intentional. My breath caught. I didn't dare look at him. His fingers tapped lightly against my leg once, twice, like he was testing the waters, waiting to see if I'd flinch. When I didn't, he moved his hand higher. Just a little. Just enough that it didn't feel like an accident anymore. The TV kept playing some mindless zombie show neither of us was actually watching, but the only thing I could focus on was Jason's hand, creeping slowly up my thigh. I finally looked at him. He was watching me, not smiling, not joking. His blue eyes locked on mine, unblinking. The air in the room snapped tight. Everything else fell away. The storm, the flickering candles, the world outside, until it was just us, just his hand, just his breathing, just me, hanging on by a thread. "You sure?" Jason asked, voice so low, it barely made it past the sound of the rain. I swallowed, my throat dry. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. That was all it took. Jason leaned in, not rough, not rushed, like he was giving me every chance in the world to pull away. When his mouth finally met mine, it wasn't some epic movie moment. It was tentative, careful, almost nervous. Our lips brushed, hesitant, before he pressed harder. And then suddenly, all the tension, all the messed up, unspoken things between us broke loose. I kissed him back. Harder than I meant to, hungrier. His hand slid further up my leg, his fingers digging into the muscle like he needed to anchor himself. I grabbed the back of his neck, pulling him closer, tasting beer and salt and something that was so Jason it made my head spin. The blanket fell to the floor with a soft whoosh. Jason half climbed onto me, straddling my lap without a second thought, his body pressing down against mine, heavy and hot. I gasped into his mouth when I felt it. The unmistakable hardness against my thigh. He wanted this. He wanted me. Jason pulled back just enough to rest his forehead against mine, breathing hard. "I didn't think you'd..." I cut him off by pulling him back down into another kiss. This one, messy and desperate, all teeth and need. His hands roamed up under my shirt, calloused fingers skimming my ribs, making me shiver. I tugged at the hem of his gym shorts without thinking, feeling the thin elastic give under my grip. Jason broke the kiss long enough to shuck off his shorts, leaving him in nothing but a pair of tight black briefs. My brain barely registered it, too busy cataloging every new inch of skin, the sharp lines of his hips, the trail of hair running down from his stomach, the way his thighs bracketed mine like he was claiming me. "You're unreal," Jason muttered, voice hoarse, before crushing his mouth to mine again. I could feel him, all of him, straining against the thin cotton between us, hot and throbbing. And when his hips ground down, rolling against me, a low, broken sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. Jason grinned against my mouth, cocky and breathless at the same time. "You like that?" he murmured, shifting his hips just enough to make me grind up into him involuntarily. "Jason," I gasped, clutching at his sides, nails digging into his skin. He just laughed, a rough, wrecked sound, and dipped his head to mouth at my neck, his stubble scraping in a way that made me bite my lip to keep from moaning. We moved together, clumsy and feverish, chasing something we didn't know how to name. There was no plan, no roadmap, just mouths and hands and skin. At some point, he reached between us, his hand finding me through my jeans, palming me roughly like he couldn't get enough. I nearly lost it right there, hips bucking up into his hand like I had no control over my own body. Jason bit down gently on my collarbone, then looked up at me, his eyes dark and wild. "You want more?" he rasped. I nodded, dizzy from how fast everything was spiraling, how fast he was unraveling me. He slid off my lap, dropping to his knees without hesitation. Jason stayed kneeling between my legs, his hands resting lightly on my thighs. The flickering candlelight made his skin glow, casting long, soft shadows across his face. He looked at me like he was waiting for permission to move closer. And maybe, in a way, I was too. For a few long seconds, neither of us spoke. The rain outside filled the silence, steady and heavy against the roof. Finally, Jason's hand slid up my legs, slow and careful, not crossing any lines, just enough to make my breath hitch. He leaned in, his face inches from mine, his eyes searching. "You good?" he asked, his voice rough around the edges. I nodded, heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Then he kissed me again. Not frantic like before, slower this time, lingering. His hands settled on my waist, his thumbs brushing over my skin under my shirt, sending shivers up my spine. I grabbed the back of his neck without thinking, pulling him closer. It wasn't about rushing toward anything. It was about the feeling of it. The weight of him, the heat, the way he touched me like he wasn't sure if he was allowed, but couldn't stop himself. We kissed until my head spun, until the storm outside faded to nothing but a distant hum. At some point, Jason shifted, easing himself down beside me on the couch, our bodies pressed together from shoulder to knee. He pulled the throw blanket back over us like he was trying to hide us from the world, or maybe just from himself. We stayed there, tangled together, breathing each other in. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't plan this," he said, his forehead pressed to my temple. "I don't even know what the hell I'm doing." "You're doing fine," I said, my voice just as low, threading my fingers with his. Jason let out a breathless laugh, a shaky, nervous sound, but he didn't let go. Instead, he tucked himself even closer to me, like he needed to feel every inch of contact to believe this was real. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't talk about what would happen next. We just stayed there, holding on to the moment for as long as we could, while the storm raged on outside. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like maybe we were exactly where we were supposed to be. The next morning, everything felt different. The storm had passed sometime in the night, leaving the world outside washed clean and eerily still. Inside the cabin, though, the air between us was anything but calm. Jason was already awake when I opened my eyes, sitting at the edge of the couch, pulling his hoodie over his head. He didn't look at me right away. For a second, I wondered if he regretted everything that had happened, if it had all been a mistake. "Hey," I said quietly, my voice rough from sleep. Jason glanced over his shoulder, flashing a small, lopsided smile. "Morning," he said, like nothing unusual had happened at all. But there was something tight around his eyes, something careful. He tossed me a bottle of water from the coffee table and stood up, stretching. "I'm gonna make some breakfast," he said, heading toward the tiny kitchen without waiting for a response. I sat up slowly, the blanket pooling around my waist. The couch still smelled faintly like him. Wood smoke, rain, and something warm I couldn't name. For a minute, I just sat there, trying to figure out how to act normal when nothing felt normal anymore. By the time I joined him in the kitchen, Jason had scrambled some eggs and burnt a few pieces of toast. He was pretending to be busy, fussing with the coffee maker like it was the most complicated machine in the world. I leaned against the counter watching him. "You okay?" I asked finally. Jason shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." It didn't sound like the whole truth, but I didn't push. Not yet. We ate in relative silence, broken only by the occasional clink of forks against plates. Outside, the sun climbed higher, lighting up the lake like a sheet of silver. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. There was a new kind of tension between us now. Not the charged, electric kind from last night, but something heavier, unspoken. Like we both knew we had crossed some invisible line but didn't know how to walk it back. After breakfast, we half-heartedly decided to go out for a hike, just to do something. Maybe being outside would clear the weirdness out of the air. The trail wound through the woods behind the cabin, the ground still damp from the rain. Jason walked ahead of me, his shoulders tense under his hoodie. Normally we would have joked around, raced each other up the hills, pushed each other into puddles, but today it was all careful distance and fake small talk. "You think we'll catch any fish later?" Jason asked at one point, not looking back. "Maybe," I said. "We could try." He nodded like he was satisfied with that and kept walking. I hated it. Hated that it felt like we were both too scared to bring up the thing sitting between us. Heavy and obvious. Finally, at the top of a hill overlooking the lake, Jason stopped. He turned to me, his face serious. "Last night," he started, then trailed off. I waited, heart hammering. Jason rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit I knew too well. "I don't want to make things weird," he said. "I mean, it was good. It was, I wanted it." The words tumbled out, awkward and rushed. "But I don't know what this is. I don't know what it means." I swallowed hard. Neither did I. But hearing him say it out loud still hurt more than I expected. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We're okay." Jason looked relieved, but there was something else too. Something that felt like distance. He smiled, that same crooked grin he always used when he wanted to avoid talking about real things. "Yeah, okay." We stood there for a minute longer, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, a part of me already knew. Things were changing between us. And no matter how hard we tried to hold on to last night, it was slipping through our fingers. The rest of the weekend passed in a weird, uneasy blur. We fished. We grilled burgers that ended up half-burned. We even played a few rounds of cards late into the night, laughing a little too hard at stupid inside jokes. From the outside, it probably looked the same. Two best friends hanging out at the lake like we always did. But underneath all of it, there was this tightness, like neither of us could quite relax. When I caught Jason looking at me across the campfire, something in his expression twisted my gut. It wasn't regret exactly. It was fear. Fear of what it meant. Fear of being seen differently. Fear that last night wasn't just a fluke, that maybe he had wanted it more than he could admit. Maybe fear of wanting it again. When Sunday afternoon came, we packed up the cabin in near silence. Jason double-checked the windows and doors. I gathered up the trash and folded the damp blankets. Everything felt mechanical, like if we just acted normal enough, we could erase what happened. By the time we were throwing our bags into the back of his beat-up truck, Jason finally broke the silence. "So, he said, fiddling with the strap of his duffel bag. "Back to real life, huh?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Back to the grind." Jason nodded, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring down the dirt road, like he couldn't wait to leave. The drive back was brutal. Neither of us said much. The radio played low, random country songs that didn't fit the mood at all. Every few minutes, I caught Jason tapping his fingers against the steering wheel, a restless, nervous rhythm. By the time we got back to the city, my chest felt like it was in a vice. When he pulled up to my apartment building, Jason didn't even put the truck in park. He just threw it into neutral and leaned over the wheel, his head bowed like he was thinking hard. "Thanks for the weekend," I said quietly, grabbing my bag. He nodded once. I waited, hoping he'd say something, anything, but he didn't. Just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched tight. So I got out, slamming the door a little harder than necessary, and didn't look back. The next few days were torture. At first, I told myself he was just busy. Classes, work, life. It made sense. But as the texts got fewer and fewer, and the ones he did send were short, clipped, almost cold, it got harder to pretend. When we did finally meet up again, a group hangout with some mutual friends at a local bar, it was like we were strangers. Jason laughed at the right moments, clapped me on the back like nothing had changed, flirted shamelessly with the waitress, the girls at the next table, anyone who wasn't me. And I just sat there, smiling through gritted teeth, trying not to let it show how much it was killing me inside. Because every time he looked past me, every time he brushed me off like just another friend, it felt like that night at the cabin had been erased. Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. The final straw came 2 weeks later. It was a random Friday night. I was scrolling my phone, half watching some dumb movie, when a mutual friend texted me, "Yo, Jason's here with that girl from his psych class. They're all over each other. You knew he was seeing someone?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't known. Because Jason hadn't told me. I should have been prepared. Should have expected it. But somehow, it still hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just that he was hooking up with someone else. It was the way he hadn't even thought to tell me. Like we were really, officially, back to being just casual friends. Or worse, like we were nothing at all. I stared at the text for a long time, my phone heavy in my hand. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Cars honking, people laughing, music spilling from open windows. But inside my apartment, it was quiet. Too quiet. I put my phone down face down on the table, leaned back against the couch, and closed my eyes, trying not to think about the way Jason's hands had felt on me, the way he had looked at me like maybe I was something more. Trying not to wonder if, even for a second, it had meant anything to him at all. I told myself I wasn't gonna text him. I told myself I wasn't gonna care. But around midnight, after sitting in the dark for way too long, I gave in. "Me? Hope you're good." Nothing. I stared at the screen, waiting like an idiot. Minutes stretched into an hour. No reply. I finally tossed my phone onto the couch and got ready for bed, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. But just as I was about to turn off the light, my phone buzzed. "Jason, can we talk?" We met up the next afternoon at this half-dead coffee shop near campus, neutral ground, the kind of place where neither of us could freak out too loudly. When I walked in, Jason was already there, slouched in a corner booth, a half-empty coffee in front of him. He looked rough, tired, unshaven, like he hadn't slept. For a second, seeing him like that, my heart twisted. But then I remembered the text. The girl. The way he'd acted like nothing had happened between us. And that twisted feeling turned into something sharp. I slid into the booth across from him, keeping my face blank. "Hey," he said. "Hey." We sat in silence for a second, the awkwardness almost unbearable. Finally, Jason leaned forward, elbows on the table, his hands fidgeting with the coffee cup. "I screwed up," he said, voice low. "I didn't mean to. I freaked out, okay?" I didn't say anything. I wanted to let him talk. I wanted to hear him say it. "I didn't know what to do after the cabin," he continued. "I thought it was just a heat-of-the-moment thing. I didn't want to mess up what we had." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "So you thought pretending nothing happened was better?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant. Jason flinched like I'd slapped him. "I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did." He ran a hand through his hair, looking miserable. "I didn't plan on hooking up with someone else. It just happened." The words hung in the air, heavy and awful. I laughed. Short and bitter. Yeah, things just happen a lot with you, huh? Jason winced but didn't argue. I stared at him. Really stared, and realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. He wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. And no matter how much I wanted him, no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't make him choose me. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. I can't do this, Jason, I said quietly. I can't pretend it didn't mean something to me. And I can't be the guy you use to figure yourself out. He opened his mouth to say something, but I shook my head. Don't, I said. Don't make it worse. He just sat there, staring at me, looking completely lost. And maybe in another life, I would have stayed. Maybe I would have waited. But not this time. I turned and walked out into the afternoon sun, letting the door swing shut behind me. Outside, the world felt too bright, too busy, but for the first time in weeks, I could finally breathe. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was clean, like setting a broken bone. I didn't look back. Not once. Because sometimes the people you love most are the ones you have to walk away from. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real love looks like too.